Every day, my wife would give me vitamins to help me fall asleep so she could cheat on me at the bar next door. There, some of my friends saw her kissing two guys at the same time. Roman sat with his eyes on the steam rising from his coffee mug as he sat at the breakfast table. He and Naomi had done it every day for years, and it was a peaceful moment before the busy day began. But lately, these times were spent by himself. The chair across from him was often empty, and Naomi's side of the bed was cool and quiet when he woke up. He remembered the woman he had married. She was always up for a trip or a late-night movie, and she was very lively and full of life. But Naomi seemed like a long time ago now. She looked tired most of the time these days, and her smiles and laughing didn't seem real. When Roman tried to talk to her to try to understand, she waved him off with a tired smile. "I've just not been able to sleep well, or work's been crazy." The second reason is what made her bring a bottle of vitamins home. "They'll help you sleep," Naomi told him as she pushed the bottle across the table. Roman was unsure one night. He had never taken vitamins before, but the worry in her eyes made him change his mind. He said, "Okay, if it helps." But the vitamins seemed to make the gap bigger instead of smaller. There was nothing that could wake Roman up in the middle of the night. When he woke up, Naomi's side of the bed would be empty, and the only sound in the house was the soft ticking of the living room clock. His friends had already begun to talk. At first, Roman thought their words were just idle chatter. "Did you see Naomi at a bar? Not funny." Either she was working late or she took a drive to clear her mind. But the rumors got stronger and louder. People said they saw her very close to someone, and her laughter could be heard throughout the dark bar. Roman shook his head to get rid of the thoughts. Didn't he believe Naomi? They had built a life together and been through hard times together. But once the doubt seed was sown, it wouldn't go away. It got worse every day because Naomi kept being absent and his friends talked about it. He checked the time. It was almost time to go to work. He looked at the bottle of vitamins as he stood up. He had an idea out of the blue, and a plan began to form in his mind. He was going to take charge and see what was going on for himself. He couldn't keep living in this state of doubt and insecurity. Roman took a few vitamins and planned to act like he was taking them tonight. He was going to stay awake, watch, and wait. That way, he might get it. He might catch Naomi lying, or he might find out that he didn't need to be afraid. He took a deep breath, grabbed his keys, and left the house. The fresh air in the morning was very different from the chaos inside him. It seemed like the streets he knew were different as he drove to work. It was like he was seeing them through a veil of fear and doubt. Roman saw that today was the start of something. He wasn't sure if it meant the end of his worries or the end of his marriage. He was set on finding out though. His life was falling apart, and he needed to figure out where all the loose ends were going. Roman found it harder and harder to ignore the new pace that had formed in the evenings at home. Naomi would come back late, and her steps would be softer, as if she didn't want to wake him up. Roman, who was trying hard not to fall asleep, would listen carefully. The sound of her motions was both familiar and strange. The vitamin bottle was sitting in the middle of the nightstand, a quiet sign of how far apart they were becoming. This time, Roman's friends spoke up more, making their worries clearer and stronger. "We saw her again, Roman," they'd say, with awkward looks on their faces. She wasn't alone. Their words hurt Roman's heart like splinters, and every time he saw Naomi at the bar, it made him feel even more betrayed. He didn't want to see finished. Everything began to make sense to him again, the late nights, the tired excuses, and the new need for sleep aids. Roman used to have complete faith, but now these questions made him doubt himself. He stopped taking his vitamins and pretended to be sleepy while lying awake and looking at the ceiling. His mind was full of what-ifs and maybes. As Naomi went to sleep one night, Roman realized he couldn't stand the doubt any longer. Naomi's perfume mixed with the smell of a cigarette she never used to like. Even if it broke the fragile image of normalcy they had kept up, he had to know the truth. Rome carried out his plan the next night. He did what they always did at night, acting like he was swallowing the vitamin. Naomi slowly fell asleep and Roman lay still, his body tense with excitement. It went on for hours, with each minute getting longer than the last. He finally heard it, the soft rustling of sheets and the careful steps on the rugs. Naomi was going away. Roman got up and quickly dressed after waiting until her car's tail lights went out down the street. He followed, his heart racing to the fast beat. He thought as fast as the car, so the drive was a blur. He parked a block away from the bar and turned off the engine with his shaking hand. The bar was full of people, and the air was heavy with music and laughing. Roman paused at the door, getting ready for what he might find inside. He looked through the crowd to find the one face he wanted to see but was afraid to. He then saw Naomi, who looked bright and alive in a way he hadn't seen her in months. There was real joy in her laugh, and she threw her head back. Two guys stood next to her, and it was clear that they were both trying to get her attention by touching each other. Roman thought the ground had moved under him. The scene in front of him was very different from the life they had lived together, which now seemed like a dream. He wanted to talk to her and get answers. But he was stuck in place, unable to do anything about his broken heart. Roman watched as Naomi leaned in and kissed one of the guys passionately and tenderly. That was all the proof he needed. He knew that what his friends were saying and how he felt were both true. Naomi's cheating wasn't just a vague hunch, it was a painful truth that everyone could see. Roman left the bar with the pictures still fresh in his mind. He didn't think about the drive home because he felt so betrayed. He knew what to do next. The truth was out and something had to be done. They could no longer trust each other, and Roman knew there was no going back. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he was determined to face it, no matter how scary it might be. Roman woke up to a world that seemed different after seeing Naomi's betrayal the night before. Even though the sun was still shining and the birds were still singing, Roman felt like everything was dirty because of the truth he was carrying. Naomi didn't know about Roman's finding at night, so she went about her morning routine with a happiness that made him mad. Every time she smiled or touched him without meaning to, it hurt like a knife in his heart. He no longer trusted or loved the woman she used to be, even though she looked like someone he knew. Roman's mind was torn between many feelings, like anger, sadness, and doubt. But deep down, there is always a strong desire to fight. He was dying to talk to Naomi about her lies and cheating. He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out because they hurt too much and he was afraid of what would happen if he did. Roman could feel the gap between them getting bigger as Naomi kissed him on the cheek before she left for work. He was left by himself and surrounded by the remains of a life that now seemed like a lie. The house, which used to be full of shared dreams and laughter, now rang with the silence of secrets and unspoken truths. Roman thought about his friends, who had tried to warn him. He felt a little guilty that he hadn't listened to them sooner and had written off their worries as idle rumors. He felt more than that, though. He felt betrayed. Naomi's actions not only broke their marriage vows, but they also made him doubt his judgment and ability to tell the difference between truth and lies. The day went by very quickly. Roman's behaviors were automatic and based on habit rather than purpose. He missed his meetings because he couldn't concentrate on anything but the turmoil inside him. As night fell, it became unbearable to think about another night of lying not to know about Naomi's cheating. He decided it was time to talk to her about it. Roman practiced the conversation over and over in his head. At the end of each one, he demanded answers. He needed to hear her side in order to understand where she had gone wrong and why she had chosen to lie instead of telling the truth. When Naomi came back that night, Roman was already there, but the bottle of vitamins was missing from the table. He looked very serious, which was very different from the fake smile he had been wearing up until now. "Naomi, we need to talk," Roman said, his voice calm even though he was feeling very upset. Naomi's face lost its happy look and took on a flicker of worry instead. He had never heard her voice sound so worried before when she asked, "What's wrong?" He paused as he looked for the right words to say. "It's about us, about our marriage. I know about the bar, about the men." Naomi's face turned pale, and her eyes grew big with shock. She was quiet for a moment, as if she were thinking about what to do. She then spoke slowly. She used a mix of excuses and reasons to say what she did. She talked about how she felt ignored and how she was looking for fun and attention that she couldn't find at home. She talked about having short-term problems with her reasoning and making mistakes without thinking about what would happen. Roman heard, and every word Naomi said made him feel even more betrayed. The talk went on for a long time, and the night got darker. In the end, there were no acceptable answers or clues that could fix what was wrong. Romeo knew what he had to do as Naomi's words got shorter. They could no longer trust each other because they had been cheating and lying to each other. Anything that had been done could not be taken back. Roman was alone in their bedroom at the end of the night, while Naomi was in the guest room. There was more than just physical space between them now. There was a chasm of pain, disappointment, and a love that could never be the same again. Roman was wide awake, and the shadows in the room showed how he felt. One thing was for sure, their marriage, which had once been a source of strength and happiness, was now a source of deep, never-ending sadness. Roman woke up the next morning with a sense of purpose he hadn't had in weeks, after their heartbreaking talk. The house was quiet, and the air was heavy with emotions and words that were not spoken. He knew that today would be very important and that it would be the day that their marriage turned around. Roman found Naomi in the kitchen. The red edges around her eyes showed that she hadn't slept well the night before. They stopped saying the nice things they usually do in the morning. The act of normality could no longer be maintained. The room felt heavy after they told the truth, and the air was charged with the certainty of what was going to happen. "Naomi," Roman said, his voice stronger than he felt. "I've been thinking about everything you said last night. Even though I know you were upset, what you did was wrong." Naomi looked up, and her face showed a mix of regret and anger. She spoke softly and shook her head. "Roman, I never meant to hurt you. I just felt so lost, so alone." He tried to hold back his feelings and said, "But you chose to lie and betray our marriage, Rome. You didn't talk to me about it or try to get through it. Nicole, you broke up with my husband. After that, how can I trust you again?" The anger and hurt in their voices made the talk get worse very quickly. Roman talked about how he felt betrayed and angry about being lied to. Naomi then tried to explain what she had done, why she needed to be validated, and how she felt neglected. But the gap between them seemed too big to bridge. When the fight got really bad, Roman made a choice he never thought he'd have to make. "I can't go on like this," he said, and it was clear that he meant it. "I want a divorce." Naomi's response was a mix of sadness and acceptance. She must have known in her heart that their marriage couldn't handle this level of betrayal. But hearing the words out loud made it feel very real. Roman went on, this time with a calmer voice, "I'll be calling a lawyer. We need to talk about how to handle everything, including our money." The subject of money made Naomi feel bad, and her mood changed. There was a short flash of something that looked like fear in her eyes. "Roman, let's not do anything right away. Why don't we talk about this?" But Roman was set on his goal. The pictures of Naomi at the bar, the lies and cheating were still too fresh and painful. "Noah, I think we're done talking. We clearly now need different things. I need to plan for the future." The rest of the day was a blur of busy business and awkward silences. Roman called a lawyer, which started the process of them splitting up. He also started to figure out their joint accounts and was shocked by how complicated the things they owned together were. Roman lay in bed that night, thinking about how important his choice was. He asked for the end of his marriage, which he had thought would last forever. The future was unclear, and there was no clear way to get there. But even though his feelings were all over the place, he felt calm. Another part of his life was coming to an end, and even though the next pages were blank, they were his to write. It was the end of Roman and Naomi's life together after the fight. They could no longer feel the love that had bound them together. It was just a memory of a time when faith was more than just a word, it was the basis of their relationship. Roman was having a hard time falling asleep, but he knew that the hardest part of his trip was yet to come. Roman's life became full of court dates and tough talks in the weeks that followed. Even though the divorce process was pretty simple, it was a maze of emotions. Each signature, every break in their shared life, felt like proof that something they used to love was over. Roman felt a lot of different feelings, including anger and a deep sense of loss. They had planned to spend the rest of their lives together, so he was sad about both of those things. Everything they split up and memory that came back was a sign of that loss. Naomi seemed to go back and forth between feeling bad about what she did and being defensively angry. Roman didn't know about some parts of their relationship that the process brought to light, like Naomi's careless spending and Roman's deep-seated anger that had never been spoken. He no longer felt close to the woman he married. She had been his best friend before they got married. There were no dramatic courtroom fights to finalize the divorce, it was just a simple exchange of papers in a lawyer's office. As Roman left the building, the formal tie to Naomi was finally broken. He felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. After getting divorced, Roman thought about his life all over again. Before, the house was a sign of their shared goals. Now, it felt too big and full of ghosts. He made the choice to sell it, which felt like the end of an important part of his life. But ends led to new starts. Roman was able to start over after the house was sold. He bought a place that was smaller and easier to handle. It was a place that he could make his own. Organizing and decorating it became a way for him to deal with stress and take charge of his life and surroundings. Roman also got back in touch with old friends who had tried to warn him about Naomi. They greeted him back with a mix of happiness and "I told you so" jokes. Because of their help, Roman was able to slowly build up his social life again after Naomi's death. Roman threw himself into his work with a newfound sense of energy. Being distracted was nice, and he felt good about what he had done. His job, which had been put on hold during the rough last few months of his marriage, gave him a feeling of purpose and accomplishment. Even with all of these changes, Roman still found time to think about himself. He went to therapy to work through the feelings that the breakup had brought up. Even though it hurt, Roman knew that it had to be done. His goal was to get better, to heal, and to learn from the past so that it wouldn't happen again. Roman felt more hopeful than he had in a long time as the months turned into a year. Even though the pain from the past was still there, it wasn't what made him who he was. The trouble of his failed marriage had made him stronger and more self-aware. Romeo's journey left him with scars, but it also showed him how to grow and be strong. He had made it through the rough waters of betrayal and loss and come out on the other side. Even though Roman didn't know what the future held, he was ready to accept its promise. He had a story of falling and rising, which shows how strong the human spirit can be even when life throws you curveballs.